NJ.com and the Star Ledger welcome to the Rutgers Rant, your one-stop podcast for the Scarlet Knights, with your hosts Steve Politti and Rutgers insiders Brian Fonseca and Pat Lenny. Let's start chopping.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the Rant. Politti here, Fonseca, Lanny. Three of us. I see it now, the future. Me, you, two, craps table, Greektown Casino, Christmas morning, 2 a.m. That's where this is headed now, boys. Got ourselves the fifth win, 3 chances to get the 6th win. And people did point this out, I will say, and they're right, on the Discord, which is flourishing, our new Discord. If you're not in our Discord, I don't know where you are. You're someplace else on the internet. I know it's for the kids, but we all can be young at heart in Discord. People did point out accurately that there's still a chance this could be better than Detroit. This could be an 8-4 season. This win opens up a lot of doors here. We're going to talk about bowl possibilities in a minute, but I want to start with a very simple premise here. Was this win the most important? Not the biggest, not the sexiest, not the best win of Greg Schiano 2.0, but given what it has done for this season, do you think it was the most important win?
I'll say no. I'll say this. I thought the win against Washington to go 4-0 was the most important because it set you up for maybe an unprecedented season in the Big Ten. Mm-hmm. Obviously, Rutgers did not pull through on that, so it kind of sours some of it. But I still think that opportunity presenting itself is more important. I will say, though, this is very important because you lose, you go to 4-5, you might miss a bowl game the year after making a bowl game. This kind of puts that alive and really revitalizes a season that was going down the tubes, and a lot of questions were going to start being raised if they had lost this game and continued to spiral.
I'm going to say it was the most important game of this season. I think it was more important than Washington, like the point Brian was trying to make. I hear that. It set up that dream season. I do buy into that, but I think if you lose that one to Minnesota, this thing that it's done, it's over. There was no coming back from 4-5 in my view. The only other game I can pinpoint that was more important so far that I've been around for the last 2.5 years was at Indiana last year to clinch bowl eligibility to get that 6th win. That was like a hurrah moment, a kudos to all the guys that got him there, and something that set up this trajectory for years to come. So I think that one was just slightly more important. I don't know, getting in that 6th win this year will trump that, but it'll certainly be right there as well.
I guess I just feel like the wheels on the bus were about to come flying off if they lost that game, and instead they went in there with and tightened the lug nuts. That's this is what this win was. And you saw what Rutgers wants to be as a team again. Like we talked about this in a couple podcasts ago. Did Rutgers lose its identity? All right. Well, now the defense looked like a Rutgers defense. It wasn't perfect, but it was stout. It held the team under 20 points and made the big turnover late. And I think it was just a fitting thing. I wrote about it for a guy like Tyreen Powell, who stayed here, who went through a bunch of injuries. Greg Schiano talked about he would have been a top 50 pick. I don't know, but he certainly would be playing in the NFL. I think we can agree on that. Had he not got injured against Indiana in that game you mentioned before, Pat, last season. In fact, he stayed. He thinks he's going to be this, linebacker core with more Touré. He comes back to play with him. He loses the guy next to him immediately in camp, gets hurt early on, misses the first 2 games, never is completely right, looks like a shadow of himself. I mean, watching him run around, limping around in Southern Cal against the fast players there. Then he gets healthy, gets a week off, and he looks like Tyreen Powell again, makes that big hit late on, they recover the fumble, and they win the game. That's kind of what I remember. That's what I think about with a Greg Schiano coach team. And finally, we saw that.
Yeah, and it wasn't just Powell on the defense too. Like a guy like Robert Longerbeam was kind of in a similar situation. He had 3 pass breakups, looked like his old self. Mm-hmm. You got big contributions from guys that were second string guys. Jordan Walker, Jordan Thompson had the strip sack. So it really was a total team effort on the defensive end. you had those leaders like Powell and Longerbeam getting the job done, but you also got big contribution. Daryl Jabome had 13 tackles, a sack, 3 tackles for loss, right? Like, so it was finally the complete performance that you were looking for as a defense. And that's probably the most encouraging thing. But the thing I wrote about was how Joe Harris-Simiak kind of stripped it down to the studs, as to quote Greg Schiano. And Brian watched the film. Maybe you can elaborate on a little bit more. Things look differently. The way they tackled, obviously you pointed that out. Just everything they weren't doing, getting pressure, forcing turnovers, those things were finally back. That's, you can't undersell that.
Yeah, I want to just emphasize a few things. I cannot overstate how important that play from Tyreen Powell was, because if that play is not made, I don't think Rutgers wins the game. That is the play I've been talking about so often on this podcast that's been missing for this team. A big play in a big moment from this defense. And of course, it had to be Tyreen Powell. I cannot agree with you more, Steve. It was fitting. He was on the field 66 snaps out of 67, I believe, or 64, right? Like, I can't overstate again how important the bye week was. Rutgers looked so much healthier. I know Greg had said that these guys aren't going to be fully recovered with just 1 week off, but that 1 week made a huge difference for these guys. And it makes a huge difference when Tyreen Powell's on the field. He stays on the field most of the game. Jabome stays on the field most of the game. There's no linebacker shuffle where guys are kind of confused with their roles. They both know what they're doing. Tyreen Powell is the leader who knows the defense inside out and can help direct Daryl Jabome, and I think that made a clear, huge difference. Rutgers did not give up one play longer than 22 yards. They did not give up any explosive plays, which just killed them against UCLA and USC. Granted, I think a big difference also is that Minnesota is playing a lot of games in a row, contrary to Rutgers, and they're nowhere near as fast as USC and UCLA's receivers. They have one stud receiver, Daniel Jackson, who was held pretty well by Bo Mascow, a guy who played a lot more snaps. To reiterate the Joe Harris-Simiak thing at a bigger scale, stripped it down to the studs and changed a lot of the, playing time. Bo Mascow played a lot more. Al-Shadi Salam played a lot more. 2 cornerbacks who held their own, and that allowed Robert Longerbeam and Eric Rogers in playing less snaps to be fresher. And then on the back end, they changed Desmond Igbinosun, who struggled a lot this season. He played 4 snaps. One of those snaps, he's in the game. They give up a touchdown where the running back is wide open. Now, I don't know if that was his assignment, but I do know that Desmond Igbinosun was the guy closest to him when he entered the end zone. Yeah. You put in Kosh Sanders, gets to start as a true freshman, and held his own, right? I think he might have been it didn't look great on the first touchdown, but otherwise was pretty good. So I think, and then, of course, the defensive line, I don't think there was any real change in the rotations or anything, but they just looked great. Keontae Hamilton looked great. Jordan Walker looked awesome. Kashawn Griffin is a defensive tackle we didn't think about at all entering the season and has just steadily been getting better. So just a complete performance from the defense against, granted, a worse offense they faced since maybe Nebraska, right? So that certainly helps. A lot of factors helped, but the defense won this game for Rutgers, I think, is fair to say.
16 pressures you had. I mean, that in itself, I do wonder this, and tell me if you agree. When you mention those snap counts, that works. So coming off a bye, it might even work coming off a team that doesn't physically beat you up like a Wisconsin or Nebraska. I do wonder if it's sustainable. If you have to have Tyreen Powell out there every play because you do not trust the guy playing behind him. I don't know. Do you think what we saw from the defense in that game was eureka, we've got it, or was it we got enough Scotch tape here in the bye week? We put this thing together to get the one win to end the losing streak. I mean, which one is it?
That is.
I tend to think it's more of a patchwork temporary solution. Especially, I brought up this point a lot the last couple of times we've done the pod or videos, that Maryland is more of a UCLA USC offense than Minnesota, and that's what scares me. The speed receiver Ty Felton is a monster. The quarterback is underrated in my opinion. So I just think, like we said this game, right? The first couple drives will tell you how the rest of the season is going to go. I think Maryland is very much the same. It's going to be one of those very indicative from the start. Can Rutgers keep up with these guys? Are they on the same playing field? So we'll see. But I tend to think like this. We anointed the Rutgers defense was back at Nebraska, right? That second half when it was terrific. And then it comes out and has the 3 worst performances of the season right in a row. I think it might just be a little too early with the sample size to anoint that again.
Right. Could not agree more. I think that's the big question. Can they build on this? And I think, like you said, Steve, they come off a bye week. They're fresher. That certainly helps against the opponent that, in comparison to USC and UCLA, is kind of playing in mud. I hate to keep harping on this, but it's just not the same level of talent on the outside. So if they can continue to do this, if they can stay relatively healthy and not get too banged up on this game, is a big thing. I want to go back to the pressures, because Rutgers' pressure numbers this season have been not bad, right? Like 16 is not a season high. It's not completely abnormal.
Right, really?
The difference is they got 4 sacks. They got the guy on the ground, and they could have had more if in the first drive, it looked like they had Max Brosmer surrounded on all sides, and somehow he escapes. If they had taken advantage of those opportunities, they could have had even higher. The difference is they cashed in on those opportunities. The safety was huge, obviously. Kashawn Griffin, 2 plays before the safety, gets a sack that drops them back 8 yards and sets up the safety. So I think that is important. Not only that they got pressure, they cashed in. Now, can they take all of the success they had and do it against Maryland, a much tougher opponent? Like Pat said, cannot agree more.
Before we move on to Maryland, I do want to talk about the offense and it was a nice moment for Athan Kaliakmanis. You spent some time with him out in Illinois, his dad, and you got to know them a little bit. Bring us there to that point when the big hug, kind of the emotional scene there with Greg Schiano, because clearly, for all of it's just another one of 12 on the schedule. It was not for this family.
Yeah, and I think Athan was honest about it after the game. He admitted it was a really unique experience, and it was hard because you played with these guys for 3 years. They're your friends, and you work with them, and then all of a sudden you're on the opposite side. You're game planning against them. You're hoping to beat them, and and everyone. I think Greg had a great point about this. Everywhere he went for the past week, including meeting us, everyone asked him, "What does this game mean? Like, what is it like?" and all this stuff, right? So I'm sure for him it was just a relief to get this over with. And I think he's clearly well-liked in Minnesota. We can speculate all we want about how things ended, but the reality is after the game ends, they do victory formation. Minnesota just lost the game, and yet the entire roster, it seemed like, was walking over to Athan. Everyone shaking his hand, patting his helmet, hugging him, and saying these nice words to him. And I think that meant a lot to him. And I think it's a great showing to the kind of guy Athan was at Minnesota and how much he was appreciated by his teammates. That his dad runs onto the field. I don't think his dad has ever been on the field after a win, but he was on the field after that one. He really wanted to be there. He gave his son this great big hug. And then Greg Schiano comes out of his NBC interview, sees the two of them, and he gives both of them a hug. It's a nice little moment. I talked to his dad on the concourse and caught up with him. He had the game ball that Athan gave him. And I was like, "What happened? What did you guys say in the huddle?" He said, "We said nothing. Nothing needed to be said. It was just a moment of pure jubilation." And I think this game didn't mean a lot to them. I was at their pizzeria in Antioch in the summer. You look on the walls, there's photos of Athan and Dino in their Minnesota uniform. They were there. They gave themselves to that place for 3 years, and it meant a lot to them those 3 years. So I think this win had a little bit of something. And I think the biggest thing for Athan, he said that PJ Fleck came to him, said he's happy for him. And I think that moment meant a lot for him too. So I just think I don't know what this win means for the season. I don't think we'll know until next week, obviously. But I think this is a win that will stay in Athan Kaliakmanis and his family's memory for a long time. Yeah. His dad said he's putting that game ball in the middle of his sports memorabilia, but it's going to be his pride and joy. And I certainly believe that.
Yeah, a pretty good sign that when they picked him to be captain, sometimes you pick the newcomer as a captain and people are like, "Well, gee, he just got here." I think pretty clearly from what I saw and what I've seen before that too, but I'm not dismissing what I saw. But what you saw from the way his former teammates embraced him, he is a leader. He's the kind of guy that is certainly well liked by this team. We see it from them. It's a great point. Overall, his performance. I mean, the first half, you're thinking to yourself, "Oh, this is the best quarterback we've seen in forever." I think it was 14-18 or something like that. 2 touchdowns, 200 yards. Third quarter, not as much, and that was partly, I think, some drops, some misreads maybe. But what I liked about that game for him was that he bounced back from that and had a couple of big throws in the fourth quarter, and sort of turned it around, Pat. It wasn't the perfect showing, but it was pretty good.
It was about as good of a performance as any Rutgers fan has seen since Gary Nova, right? Like that was, there were big time throws down the field. How many times have we come on this podcast? Let's get the ball downfield, please. Finally, you saw that with Ian Strong, KJ Duff, the 2 underclassmen who have really been really impressive the last couple of weeks. And the biggest play for Athan was the touchdown after the Tyreen Powell forced fumble, right? Like that was a critical pressure situation. made the perfect read. Strong got open, and he hit him perfectly. So he completed 3 passes in the second half, and one of them was that touchdown. So, grand scheme of things, you'll take that performance any week, any day of the week, right? Any time. That was an awesome performance, and the biggest thing was, without Kyle Monungai, what was this offense going to look like? Right, right. After being so dependent on the run, obviously the 2 underclassmen, Antoine Raymond and Jayshon Benjamin, really stepped up. But right out of the gate, what I saw was that Kirk Shiraka had full trust that this was going to be Athan's day. They came out throwing. I think the first play was a shot down the field, or at the very least, they came out throwing, and that was the bigger point that I'm trying to make here. It was like, when was the last time Rutgers threw the ball like 3 straight plays to start a game? It would definitely have to predate Cal Monungai being the running back. So either way, it was a day for the Kaliakmanis, like you said, Brian. It was a day for some new things and
a bunch of guys to throw to
of the offense.
Right, a bunch of guys to throw to, Pat. That's for the first time. Like when you got Duff, you got Strong, Miller. It had some drops in the game, but I feel the first time I felt good about the receiving core in a long time. And when you start looking at strength of this team going forward, that to me, all right, you can check that box for next year. Like, I'm not sure you can check a lot of boxes. Maybe you check the running box, back box now, based on what you saw from those 2 guys, Brian, right? I mean, 2 different types of players, and certainly some talent there at that position.
Really quick, I want to go on a couple of things. I was very impressed with Athan not getting too amped up early in the game. I was worried the first half might get out of sorts because of the emotion of the game. Completely steady in the first half. I'll ask you guys this. That was the best half a Rutgers quarterback has played since when? It's got to be like, Mike Teal in 2008, maybe, like Gary Nova at some point.
You can laugh at this. I saw Teal in the press box in the hot dog line. And I actually said that to him. This is coming up from the radio booth. I said, I'm like, when was the last time? Was like Pittsburgh in 2007? The last time we saw it was 8, whatever year that was, where he threw for like 8,000 yards against Pittsburgh, and he just laughed. He was right. He thought the same thing. That was that kind of half. Absolutely.
Yeah, and the second half, I think, is partly Athan. Part of it is a lot of more pressure from Minnesota. They almost never touched them in the first half. And then the second half, they kind of dialed it up a lot more. And then, I mean, inexplicably, Dymir Miller looked like the best Rutgers receiver since Leonte Carew in the first half. And then in the second half, I just cannot – some of the throws weren't perfect, but they were catchable. And he just 3 drops, really hard to explain. And then my question off of that was, I looked at the stats. Christian Dremel caught the second pass of the game. The second play of the game, he had a 17-yard pass. I don't think he was targeted after. What is the vendetta against Christian Dremel? Why doesn't this guy get more touches?
Well, what are you going to play? You're not going to play 4 receivers. If you decide Miller's better,
they did play 4 receivers. They finally played 4 receivers. It was
how many possessions do they play 4 receivers? A lot,
3, 4, 5. I don't have the numbers. They don't track that on PFF. But I mean, that was a couple of things. That brings me to a thing I want to mention. They made 2 tweaks. 4 wide receiver sets that PJ Fleck mentioned in the press conference was something they weren't prepared for because Rutgers never did. I think Rutgers played 3 receiver sets 99.9% of the time before today. And a couple of times, and they've done this in the past this year, tempo. A couple of times the NBC broadcast was in the middle of showing a replay when Rutgers was already snapping the ball and throwing it downfield. That helped in the first drive, and I believe a second half drive. So like that those kind of tweaks from Kirk Shiraka kept them off balance. But I'm just saying, Dymir Miller, by the time he had a second drop, maybe you throw Christian Dremel in the slot and give him another chance. He's the most sure-handed guy you have. We're nitpicking here. But these are the discussions we would be having if Athan and the offense didn't punch in that touchdown from the Tyrone Powell play, which is not something we should take for granted because we've seen this team get in the red zone 5 yards from the end zone and not be able to punch it in. So it is worth mentioning how valuable it is that they actually pulled through and scored that touchdown. And then to the running backs, to answer your original question, they did not play a big factor until the fourth quarter when Jayshon Benjamin, his freshness was so clear, having not played the first 8 weeks of the season. And he's just running through dudes, breaking tackles. He had 7 missed tackles. And that was a key drive to 1, kill some clock, 2, take out some of Minnesota's timeouts, and 3, get to the position where Jay Patel could kick a field goal to put them up 2 scores, which is the difference between them winning that game the way they did and Minnesota potentially going to overtime.
Miller 5 for 58, 2 touchdowns, 11.6 average. I think he had 7 straight targets where he didn't catch the ball, which, yeah, you're right. He seems like he's hot, runs hot or cold. Probably why he was at Monmouth, that's, but certainly it's just
But he
hard
gets
to figure.
open. He gets open.
Exactly.
That's the big thing.
Yeah.
Can't be undersold.
All right.
I mean,
so
he was open on that. There was a third down in the middle of that 4-drive stretch where they could not get into rhythm offensively, where he was wide open. The ball was right at him. It would have been a key conversion, and he just dropped it. It's just head scratching, really. I'm sure he's scratching his own head here. And another thing with him, I was very surprised. Those 2 touchdowns were his first touchdown since the season opener against Howard. A surprising amount of I thought he'd score more touchdowns this season. That was a surprising stat to me.
All right, let's talk about where this is going now, because it can go someplace. If they lost that game, we would be talking about next season. Instead, we've got at least a discussion about where the season's headed. 3 games left, at Maryland, Illinois, at Michigan State. This is not Penn State, Michigan, Ohio State, fellas. Just looking at Maryland's record now, I know they played tough against Oregon, still lost by 3 touchdowns. So, I mean, that's, not great. They're 1-5 in the Big Ten. They got destroyed at home by Northwestern. I mean, we're talking about this team like oh no, they've got to play Maryland next. I mean, I don't know.
They got destroyed by Minnesota.
Got destroyed, by 20 foot. So they're giving up every game. The lowest total they've given up is, I'm looking at it now. So it's been a while. It's at Virginia in September that gave up 13. Otherwise, they've been just giving up scads of points. Yep. I don't know. This does not, this certainly is a winnable game. Illinois is I think Illinois and Michigan State play next week. That's right. So one of those 2 teams are going to lose, obviously. What do you think now? Are we at a point now where this turnaround's real, that there's an opportunity here, or is it a mirage?
Yeah, I know we talked about this a little bit earlier. This is the test, right? Maryland is how many times in the last 3 years has Rutgers come into the Maryland game thinking, we got a really good shot, and then you see what happens.
Right.
And obviously they
had embarrassing.
It's been embarrassing. The quarterback play is different at Maryland. That's going to make a huge difference, right? Going from Tagovailoa to Billy Edwards Jr. is a huge change for Maryland. But still, I think people are going to undersell Maryland tremendously. I'm not going to make that mistake.
Smart.
My only question is, do you think Rutgers is built to win a shootout? Because, like you said, Maryland's defense is Swiss cheese, and its offense is pretty good. So I think if Rutgers is going to win this game, it's going to have to be a 37-30, something to that effect. Because, again, the question is about the defense. Can they carry this over from Minnesota? It's going to be a tough challenge against Maryland. Can the offense continue its really good play against Minnesota and USC and UCLA at Maryland? I'm concerned about the trip itself. Rutgers has not really had much success in College Park, from what I remember, right? I think they won during the pandemic year, but they haven't won since, and they haven't won many times there. It's just a house of horrors. But I think that'll be a test. If they win at Maryland, then you're really opening up the seas for, 8-4 is certainly going to be possible if you beat Maryland. But I think Maryland, much like I said, Minnesota was probably the most winnable game left. I think this Maryland game is the least winnable just because of the matchup and the place they're going to. Yes.
All right. So you got 3 left. 5-7 gets you nothing. Bupkis, home for the holidays. Have you broken this down now? Can we go 6-6? What we think the likely bowl scenarios are at 6-6, 7-5, 8-4? What do the projections say? What do we get from Brett McMurphy here and the boys? I haven't looked.
I haven't looked in depth. They're a little all over the place. CBS doesn't have Rutgers in there. Athlon doesn't have Rutgers. ESPN has Rutgers. One writer has Rutgers going to Detroit, which I think at 6-6 is much like the Pinstripe Bowl was so obvious last year. Yeah. I think Detroit at 6-6 is the most obvious. But another writer had my nightmare, the Duke's Mayo Bowl.
Playing Duke in the Duke's Mayo Bowl. I saw that. Right.
Which
that's not fair. It's their Mayo Bowl.
It's theirs.
It's not fair at all.
And it's in North Carolina, right? Right.
North Carolina. Nobody cares about Duke football though. So that's still a bigger crowd for Rutgers down there.
People were saying Duke should get ranked. That would be a great matchup between 2 teams where their fan base was screaming for them to get ranked. And then immediately after they started getting votes, they kind of, shit the bed. But anyway, those 2 would be interesting. I think Rutgers, if they get to 7, maybe ReliaQuest or one of those second-tier bowls, they can try and make an argument. But even at 7-5, Rutgers has no big wins. I don't think the resume or name power or play style really sells them as a program that you want to put, in Arizona, the ReliaQuest or the what are the other second-tier bowls from Music City, or I don't think they're quite there.
8-4 would probably be the minimum for that, I would think.
Right,
Sure.
right. And then it depends on what other teams are doing. And I guess when you look at the Big Ten now, it seems like there are 3 really good teams, 3 really bad teams, and then everyone is in that same vicinity, right? I mean, I don't you couldn't possibly come up with the bull order at this point. Just everyone's 4 and 5 or 5 and 4.
Exactly. It's crazy. I mean, the Big Ten could have 13, 14 bowl eligible teams.
Great.
It's crazy.
Well, is there a chance Rutgers gets 6-6 and gets left out?
No, I don't think
right.
so.
No,
Because that would be there have to be so many 6-6 teams across the country, not just the Big Ten. Like if there weren't enough Big Ten bowl ties, they just find another slot to fill them in. These are all just kind of, as we know, TV slots. So they'd find some other game to throw Rutgers into.
Right. All right. Let's see what we got here. Want to dive into some questions? And the question thing, just to be clear, we used to ask our text service, which is RIP dead, for questions. We used to get like 50 or 60 others. We're just trying to figure out a way to farm your topics here. We asked in the Discord. We got a few there. We asked on Twitter. We got 0 there. So if you have questions after a game, however you want to do you want to smoke signal them? If you're not one of these people who like to use the current technology, like you can email them, fire me off a text. I don't know if you have my cell phone number, whatever you want to do. But so we got a few. So let's dive into what we have here. One on the offense. Will some of the long shots we hit give Shiano confidence to try deep throws more? With Strong and Duff, it seems like throwing deep would benefit the offense greatly. Greg Shiano's not afraid to throw deep. Let's keep that in mind. Like he's not like the offense later in his tenure. I mean, when he had Kenny Britt, when he had guys who can get open, this is not some like Shiano is 3 yards in a cloud of dust. I mean, the guy wants to win football games no matter he can. I think absolutely if he trusts, and I don't think it's just the receivers, if he trusts the fact that they can keep Kaliakmanis from getting destroyed back there, which was the case. He had pretty good protection against Minnesota. I mean, if they can keep him upright, that to me is more important.
I think so. Yeah, I think the offensive line played well against Minnesota, and more importantly, the one-on-one matchups that Rutgers got on the outside were incredible because Minnesota has a great secondary, but Duff and Strong were winning 50-50 balls. They outplayed Minnesota.
Yes,
that's that in itself. 2 underclassmen.
Yep. Duff getting catches in traffic, Strong getting the catch. I love his long catch was maybe the prettiest catch we've seen. I don't know, in a while. Just being able to catch it, the ball with his fingertips, hauling in for 60-something yards. It was beautiful.
They're a fascinating story. So I'm sure there's more to write about these guys. And
you're going to be making the trip to St. Anthony, aren't you? I can see it in your eyes.
Yeah. Melville, New York.
Someone was asking who his quarterback was. He's quarterback for Harvard now. So
I put that in the story on the broad. They mentioned the announcers on the broadcast asked the question, who was throwing the ball to these guys? And It's a pretty funny story. I think his name's Dante Torres. He threw for almost 4,000 yards and had 48 total touchdowns in 12 games for St. Anthony as a senior. Wow. They won the state championship that year. And the funny part about it is that Ian Strong was not really a receiver in high school. He was thought of more of as a defensive player coming out of high school, that he was going to come to Rutgers and be a safety. Mm-hmm. KJ Duff kind of outshined him even as a junior. That's what he said after the game, at least. So really, really fun. I love it. High school guy.
Ian Strong might be the first case of Greg Schiano taking a player supposed to be a defensive player and moving him to the offensive side of the ball. Yeah. Normally it's the reverse, right? You take wide receivers and make them DBs. Yeah. And it was a very successful transition. The key here to throwing the ball deep that they do now that they didn't do in the past is they have tall wide receivers who can win contested balls. They have an offensive line that generally can protect better. And they have a quarterback who is decently accurate down the field. Those are the 3 things they have not had for much of the past decade. That's the big difference.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. They certainly had a quarterback in Gavin Wimsatt who could throw it long. And we did see some long pass. He did have a few long passes over the years. But yes, the idea that you can actually hit a guy and have a reasonable hope that if it is a jump ball situation, it's not always going the other direction. All right. Some more questions. And I tell you this question, it doesn't matter what forum that we use to get it. If someone had to like telegram it, Pony Express it to us about the punt returns. I love it. I love it. They found that the groove get away.
Week 3. It's such a week 3 topic.
No, it's not. It's just as hot as it was then. It never gets old. Not sure if the coaching staff or Dremel is to blame for not fielding punts, but he gave up about 30 yards of field position on 2 second half punts before getting one really good return. If the 2 others were just because they punt away from him, put 2 guys back, they can still block if they want to. All right. So the point being that, yeah, and I know what she's talking about. There was one, and it did make my head explode because I have just accepted the fact that they're not going to return punts. I've just kind of moved on. Some things you just got to move on with in life. But there was one where he had like a 10-yard running start. He caught the ball at the 25-yard line. Like momentum.
That was a kickoff.
That was a kickoff.
Yeah.
It's kickoff. Like momentum, you would think would carry you another 5 yards at least. But there was a fair catch on that one. That was like, all right, well, come on. And then, of course, fair catching the free kick, right? After the safety. There's no one within 20 yards of him. I get it. It moves the ball to 25. Stops. I get it. But do you guys have anything to add here about this? And then he finally got the point he made. Then he finally returned one, and we all nearly had heart attacks in the press box. I mean, I thought like when it happened, I'm like, wait a minute, what? Yeah.
Moment of the season.
Moment of the season.
The best, most fun I've had in the press box, maybe in my entire career. Just the second I realized it happened, I was jumped out of my chair. I was processing the whole thing.
We were hugging. It was just like,
popping bottles, going crazy.
Bottles.
That's great.
Yeah.
It was the most fun I've seen Politi have in the press box since Lathan Somerville's 7-minute stretch in the opener, which was just.
That is a clear. You know what that is? It's funny. Like, who are you rooting for? That's a clear example of someone rooting for the story. Like when I see that, like here it is. It's obvious. Oh, this is such an easy column. Come on, kid, get me 20 and 12. Yeah, that's what that one was. The punt return thing is just hysterical.
I would tell
to give Rutgers credit or give Shiano credit. Like he said it, they do it. That's it, right? Like
it's true.
There's no back and forth. There's no
second
guessing it. He has his philosophy, and they live by it.
They're second
and they
guessing
don't. They don't commit fumbles. They haven't dropped the pass. They haven't had a catastrophic special teams play because there's really no doubt. And to Pat's point, I would tell the fan base, just do what Politi did. Just accept it. Let's just don't waste any more brain power and any more of our podcast time, our precious, valuable podcast time on this topic.
That's great. Every time someone asks, I'm going to bring it up. All right. Some other questions. What is Jayshon Benjamin's role for the rest of the season? Were you guys surprised that he didn't start that game and didn't get the most carries?
No. I thought Antoine Raymond had established himself early on in the season, and the plan all along was for Jayshon Benjamin to redshirt, and I think that opened the door for Raymond to emerge as the number 3 back. And I think Benjamin is more of a versatile back who can catch the ball, be more speed oriented, whereas Antoine Raymond is more of a between the tackles runner. Obviously, he can do everything, but I think Benjamin just lends himself to that, like Brian mentioned before, that breath of fresh air, change of pace back is the perfect role for him.
If Kyle comes back and gets 20 carries, who's getting the most carries at the second in the quote unquote Sam Brown role?
It's a great question.
Because
I think Antoine Raymond fills the Kyle Monangai role. So you think that Jayshon Benjamin would be the backup in that scenario. Antoine Raymond with a great Kyle Monangai impression on a pass block. He blew up.
Yes, that was a great
Minnesota
play.
DB. And that was a great play because it helped Kaliakmanis be able to have time to roll and complete a deep pass to KJ Duff to move the ball on the touchdown drive. So a true freshman picking up that block, and 2, laying the wood. That was a really impressive play and was very Kyle Monangai-esque.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. Impressive performance by both those guys. All right. See what else we got here. Oh, this is a great one from Joe Martucci. My personal favorite weatherman. I don't know if you guys have any favorite weatherman, but he is mine. I put Joe Martucci, Al Roker, like a distant second. What do you think? Who's your second favorite weatherman?
The best part about it is too that Martucci has a real name. It's not Sarah Freeze or Sam Champion. Martucci.
You don't think Sam Champion? That's not his real name.
Suspect.
All right. Anyway, good point by him. This is great. This is something I would have forgotten. You guys need to talk about the musical chair melee at the game on the Rutgers Rant this weekend. And I got to tell you, I don't know if anybody saw this, if you went out and got a beer during, it was the first half, I think, during a break in the action. It's Veterans Day, it's Military Appreciation Day, and they had a musical chair game where I don't know if was it the plan for them to beat the shit out of each other with the chair, or did that just happen organically? Either way, what happened, they stopped the music, and instead of, I guess one guy sat on a chair and the other guy pulled it out from underneath them. And then they wrestled for like what at first you're like, oh, that's funny. And you're like, oh, okay. And then like, oh, is someone going to break this up? And then it went on for like another 15 seconds after the point. You're like, well, someone should break this up. It kept going. I think they were afraid to step in and take the chair.
I was begging Herb Dean to get in the ring and call the fight. It was over. He just wouldn't do it. What are we doing? Like, I
don't think it was over. I think they could still be out there wrestling for the chair. I'm stunned that they stopped. They finally declared a winner, but I think if they hadn't declared the guy the winner, they would have kept on going.
I thought they would have fought. I thought if they didn't declare the winner, they would have gone to fisticuffs and battled it out. I would have signed up for that. I would play the football game.
For military bragging rights either, right? There was a legitimate $1,000 prize on the line.
Oh, yes, I know that.
There was, right?
Absolutely.
$1,000. These guys are brawling. Good mention, Joe Martucci.
They gave each, if they next week, this is a suggestion again, game operations do a great job, but if they gave each guy a chair, how about that? Just come at each other with the chair. Yeah,
I like it.
You like it? Thinking outside the box here. I'm trying, doing the best I can.
Left. Yeah, 1 game left.
Speaking of game operations, I don't know if this is in any of the questions. The train horn back in full force, just absolutely blaring my ears off.
Oh, of course it was.
I don't know if that was a post-bye week decision, and maybe it helped, so you want to keep it going. Maybe that was one of the adjustments Joe Harris-Simiak made. He called up the game operations guys and said, "Blare that goddamn horn," but it worked.
We didn't
on
kill
the field
the horn.
and in my ear.
All right, here's the situation to bring this home.
Oh,
it'll be the three of us, Joe Martucci, and maybe Aaron Patel, Kevin Fine, a Hall of Famer. The five of us should do a musical chairs, but instead of music, it's just the horn blowing.
I'm not doing it. Let me tell you, I've been around Kevin Fine. I'm not doing that with him. He'll cheat. He'll do something. He'll cut my Achilles. I'm not taking that risk against a guy like that.
He's a swimmer.
Patel,
so
we can take Patel, but I'm not doing it. Fine. Forget that.
Kevin Fine has incredible aerobic stamina. Yeah. He's a swimmer. He swims every morning. He's gonna just destroy you. So I agree.
Absolutely.
Me too. Destroy me too. And Pat probably.
Absolutely.
All right. Couple more questions. Any info on Abram Wright, who appeared to sustain a dreaded non-contact celebration lower body injury on the safety? It sure looked bad. Yeah, it did look. I felt bad for him, and he really wasn't. I mean, it wasn't like one of these crazy celebrations. He just kind of jumped up in excitement after the safety in the end zone. Had to be helped off the field. I don't know if we have an update, but I would not. It looked long term.
Yeah, and there's only 3 games left in the regular season, right? So even if it's not as bad as you think, he's probably out for the year, I'd guess. Like, we'll ask Greg Schiano today and hopefully get an update. But it looked bad for him. And you're right. It wasn't like 2 weeks ago, there was a guy, I think, on Memphis who did the Ronaldo celebration, and then he busted his knee. That's kind of embarrassing. This kid just was kind of running around, and it happened.
It was exactly.
And another one that I don't know if you noticed or anyone noticed, because it was right at the end of the game, the last drive, the last play. Tyler Needham got rolled up on, and it looked like his knee buckled in this weird way. A guy from Minnesota fell on it. He did not come back for the last drive. I don't know how long-term it is, but you never like to see an offensive lineman's knee kind of go contort the wrong way. And we'll ask Greg Schiano too, but that's another guy I'm looking to. And they already just lost Wesley Bailey, which we didn't mention. He's already out for the rest of the year. He's the 6th guy. You can only afford to lose so many guys before you might not even be able to field a football team, right? So you got to hope that these guys kind of aren't out for too long.
Right. All right. And the final question, we'll go here, gun to your heads. We'll do our picks for the Maryland game specifically. But do you think Rutgers will win another game this season? More than one? All three? Which one do you guys think? You think you're getting 1, 2, or 3 here, or 0? You could go 0 if you want to be that guy.
You got a strong feeling, Pat?
As bad as I feel about Maryland is as good as I feel about Michigan State, and then Illinois is somewhere in the middle. So
Gosh, it's just Maryland
boring,
thing
right?
is just incredible. We built up Maryland into like Ohio State with
maybe it was because the last time Brian and I were in College Park, they got shellacked, and the morale of that season-ending loss was just something else.
That was, you weren't the only one. That was Greg Schiano's darkest press conference of all time.
Right.
Yeah.
So that stuck with me. I watched the Oregon game. And Oregon's awesome, but you saw some things that Maryland can do well against Oregon, and then you're like, oh man, is this Rutgers defense going to be up for this again? So I don't know. The over-under is 1.5, right, for wins over the final half of the season. I think it's, just brutal to pick this. But I will say over. I think they can get 2. I think they can get 2.
I think they're definitely getting 1. Yeah, I think they're definitely getting 1. I'm not ready to go. Not ready to go 2 or 3 just yet. But yeah,
I don't know who. I think they're going to win 1. I just can't see this team losing 3 in a row.
Totally. Yeah. And it's interesting. It's not like, again, it's not like they're crazy, and they're all there. They're not going to be a touchdown underdog in any of them.
Right.
I don't think.
They're a touchdown underdog for this one.
No.
3.5.
It'll open at 6 on Circa.
What?
Oh, I saw 3.5. Sorry.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's 6. So.
All right.
But yeah, I think, and the more frustrating thing is, though, we've kind of touched on this already, but it's going to be if they win 2 more games and they're 7-5, the what could have been thing is going to just eat away at people. Because if you're 7-5, even losing 4 games in a row in the middle of the season, can you imagine if you had beaten the UCLA like you should have, beaten Nebraska on the road? Like that's just going to gnaw at people, I think.
I get it, but I am back at it. If you're 7-5, look at it the other way. That it really was a incredible turnaround from what could have been an absolute disaster. And I think you're pulling a season from, and to me at least, talk about what changed. Went back and stripped it down to the studs in the bye week. For me, I stripped down my expectations during the bye week. It's just like, to see them come out and look competent like a good football team again, for me, that was a victory in itself. To win the game was another one. I think if you get to a bowl game now, you should be ecstatic's not the right word. You should be big sigh of relief, pleased that it didn't go completely bad. So I get it, but I get what you're saying. If they're sitting there, or if they're sitting there at 8-4, you can be like, oh my gosh, we could have been. Yeah, I get that thinking as well, but I don't think I feel that way just yet.
And if it makes you feel better, UCLA 3 wins in a row. They beat Iowa, man. I mean, they are. Listen, UCLA might be a damn wagon. Who knows? We could have completely underestimated UCLA.
Yep.
Nebraska, not as great as we thought, maybe.
Yeah, I got the angriest email because I in the column about UCLA, I used to submit like, this is UCL freaking A in the column, and this guy, of course, a UCLA grad, found it and just must have been. Again, this was like one throwaway line. It must have been a 3,000 word dissertation about how wrong I was, and I just hit delete. I wonder if that guy's gonna reply if they get to 7-5 in their bowl game. All right, what else we got?
Is it possible that UCLA finishes with a better record than SC?
Absolutely. Yes, at this point,
looking
totally
like
possible. They're both 4-5, right?
And just think about how Rutgers played in both those games, right? Like USC, it felt like they had never had a shot. UCLA, well, I mean, it might have also felt that way, but
clearly did.
But
yeah,
it was like USC was so much more talented. That was no question, in my mind at least.
Pat, I need you to get into a fight with the college football fan base. Politi has UCLA. I am in a death match every week with Notre Dame fans who keep asking me why I rate them so low.
I got one early in the season. I got Indiana when I said Rutgers should be ranked over them.
Right. But those guys are so happy.
Let's check how that. Let's see how that pick aged. Not well.
They're so happy with
They
Signetti that
forgot.
they don't
They
even
forgot. It's
think
amazing.
about Pat Lanning. The Notre Dame fans also forgot that the fact that they lost at home to frickin' Northern Illinois, and it boggles my mind that one, AP voters are having them in the top 10, and two, the College Football Playoff Committee has them in the playoff after they lost at home to Northern frickin' Illinois.
That surprises you. That surprises you, really?
Yeah.
I mean, come on, man. I mean, they must legitimately have the God on their side to be pushing them this way because
They got God and money on their side. Two important things in the world.
If they make
God,
the
money,
playoff,
and TV ratings.
If they make the
three
playoff,
most important things of all, and not necessarily in that order.
it would be travesty. It would be a disgrace if Notre Dame
Playoff. Of course they
makes the playoff over another one-loss team who didn't lose at home to frickin' Northern Illinois, who's 4-4. It's not like this is the Western Michigan team under PJ Fleck. They're 4-4. They're not good. They lost to Toledo. Anyway, I had to get that off my chest somewhere.
Okay.
I don't want to tweet because if I tweet it out, the entirety of South Bend is going to be in my mentions. We'll keep this between us, the Rutgers Rant family, unless one of you guys clips this and sends this to Irish Illustrated. Please don't.
All right. We have a lot of other action to talk about. Women's soccer. You were on the Discord. It was a fun little. We were watching. They played Southern Cal in the semifinals. One of the best teams in the country, number 4, I think, ranked overall. Beat them in the Big Ten tournament semifinals. The women's soccer team with Bodmer. Bodmer. What's her first name?
Olivia.
She doesn't need a first name. She's Bodmer. Just destroying them as an end goalie. It was incredible. I mean, it was a lot of fun. She just stopped she was in their heads by the end of it. 3 straight penalties she stopped. One with her leg. She did like Martin Brodeur circa 2005 save on this girl. I mean, it was incredible. Next game, not so great. Got absolutely destroyed by UCLA in the final. I think that's just the team that had just run out of gas. I mean, what more can you say about that?
They got down early against UCLA, 1-0, I think, within the first 10 minutes, and they kind of just snowballed from there. This is not a team that's built to come back from behind. The reason they survived against USC, they were down a player. Riley Tiernan got a red card in the 50th minute. So they were playing down a woman for 70 minutes. The only reason they were still in that game is because they scored a goal that would have fit right into 1990s English football, where Route 1, the goalie just kicks the ball as far as she can. One center forward heads the ball over, and then they score the goal to tie it 1-1. And then they put 10 ladies behind the ball, defended their lives off, went to overtime, defended again in overtime, went to penalties and won in penalties. Once you're down 1-0, 2-0, 3-0 to UCLA, this team just is not built to come back, especially without maybe their second best offensive player in Riley Tiernan.
Right.
So listen, I do think it is a concern. I know we don't really dive deep on the women's soccer team, and I don't want to rip them, right? But 4 Big Ten tournament finals, 4 losses.
I mean, come on.
It's brutal, man. And as one of the
they're different teams. It's hard to. It's going to be harder. Can you go how much harder it's going to be to win the Big Ten? Because you're not just adding teams in the Big Ten. You're adding teams that are good at this shit. Like USC, UCLA. Look at the Oregon. Some of these sports that Oregon's good at that you wouldn't even track. I mean,
still, Rutgers was one of the 2-3 best programs in the Big Ten in the sport for its entirety since joining the league, right? And this is probably Rutgers' most successful program in the athletic department since joining the Big Ten. And they've won a regular season title while going undefeated, but they just can't seem to get over the hump in the Big Ten tournament. It's got to be maddening to Mike O'Neill, my fellow Kearney native. And I just think that, I don't know if it's a concern per se. I don't know if anyone is losing sleep at the APC about women's soccer not winning the Big Ten tournament, but it's a troubling trend, I'd say.
Look at the teams. That's the troubling trend. Look at the stockpile of mediocrity in some of these teams. They're gonna nitpick this one.
Don't you
out
want
of your mind? This is the guy. What this guy right here is. This is the guy who gets mad at Scott Goodale. That's what this guy is right here. The one program that's consistently great. That's got national championship fans are like, well, dude, can't beat Michigan in a dual meet. That's who you are.
Rutgers women's soccer has been a dual meet. Yes, Rutgers women's soccer has been a wagon. Right, for 11 years in the Big Ten. They have 1 title to show for it. That, to me, is kind of disappointing.
Okay.
Listen, again, we're not
You're going to break this tie? You're going to break this tie?
I mean, come on. This one's pretty obvious. I don't even think I need to weigh in, so I'm going to abstain.
Come on.
If you saw my facial reactions during that whole conversation, you could probably just figure out where where I fall.
Yeah.
So is there a position of the Rutgers Rant that football and men's basketball and wrestling are the only sports that matter?
No, we have an entire segment here that we discussed the other teams.
So shouldn't we expect these programs that are playing at such a high level to eventually win titles?
But this is the best program. They did win a title. I mean, look at
the number 4 team in the country to get
that
there.
great tournament. That's
then they lost
hard.
I think they lost 5-0. Listen, it's not. I think
The
Rutgers
tennis
women's
team is
soccer-
like 2-712. The women's
Just because-
gymnastics.
just because volleyball-
Gymnastics.
just
they
because
were
the volleyball team
4
is
and
bad.
57, and she got like 12 raises. And they're completely unrelated to anything else. Of course, just coincidentally. You guys
Why
aren't
are
gonna
we?
give me a
why
little
are we?
tee-hee on that
No,
one?
because you're whataboutisming me. You're talking about everything else on the side, and you're ignoring the issue at hand. Okay. Listen, I like Mike O'Neill. Like I said, I think the program is the best program in the department. It feels like for all the success they've had, all the talent, the quality of the program, they have underachieved as far as bringing silverware to Piscataway. That's all I'm saying.
All right, I will say this. I'm probably number one here, like hammering Penn State for not winning the big game, right? So I can't come on here and be like James Franklin can't win the big game, and then Rutgers women's soccer is also kind of in that category, but
yeah, but Michael
different-
Neal's a great dude. James Franklin's like the most punchable human being in college sports. I think that's one difference there.
Sure.
All right, let's move on before we got the point. The second biggest crazy thing I saw this weekend, stat-wise, women's basketball beat NJIT in a game with 63 fouls. Oh, a little bit of me died that I wasn't there. Thank goodness Destiny Adams had like a double with 36 points and 20-something rebounds, which is incredible. But the 63 fouls thing was like, ooh, man.
Destiny Adams will be Big Ten Player of the Week. Apparently, I didn't watch the game. Full disclosure. Alec Rothmel, who does a great job with Rivals, he tweeted that the referees were reviewing a potentially missed foul or something. How do you miss a foul in a game with 63 fouls? Are they trying to call everything? It's insane.
Oh my gosh.
And this comes a day after football. It seemed like they didn't call any pass interference calls. That was something I kept hearing about people when they told me to watch the film review. Look out for all the DPIs they didn't call. I guess the officials, the Big Ten, called in a favor and said, hey, all the fouls you didn't call in the football game yesterday, call them in the women's basketball game to make it up. It was insane. There were 7 fouls shy of the record for women's basketball in college. That's crazy.
Wow.
3-0.
3-0 for the women's Scarlet Knights. Yep.
What's
and basketball. Men's
63 in 48 minutes?
40
minutes.
Jesus.
A lot. That's a lot.
How many free throws did they take? Did you look that up?
I did not. No.
I'm dying to. You guys keep talking. I'll look right now.
All right. And then men's basketball tonight. St. Peter's coming. The Peacocks coming to the rack tonight. Is this going to be Ace Bailey's first game back? He muted himself because he's, from what I understand, probably not going to be Ace Bailey. If I had to guess, not going to be an Ace Bailey. I think it was a couple of games, this injury. Not a huge concern still. And I don't think there's much danger of the Peacocks sneaking out with a win. Brian, you want to give us a little Peacock? I just keep on saying Peacock until you get the free throw line for the women's basketball game.
Rutgers shot 42 free throws. There was a combined 67 free throws in this game. Wow, that is absurd. I would be surprised if Ace Bailey played today. I'm not sure if his debut is going to be Friday against Monmouth. I'm not sure if I don't know what his recovery is like. One game I'd kind of look to is the Kennesaw State game in a couple of weeks, where they play back near where he played in high school, and a lot of people are probably going to go to that game to watch him and Jermichael Davis. I would imagine that at the very latest will be his first game. I reckon it's possible he makes his debut Friday against Monmouth or the following week against Merrimack. But I would be surprised.
Who's the player whose minutes suffer the most when Ace Bailey comes back? Dirk Hack, Jermichael Davis. Who do you think it's going to be?
Dirk Hack probably because he started. Martini is a little bit more versatile, can play some center, so he'll maybe play the same amount of minutes in different roles. But I would say probably Dirk Hack and all the other. PJ Hayes, he's a wing, right? So he'll probably play less time because of Ace Bailey. I mean, they're 30 minutes he's going to play, I'm assuming, barring foul trouble or anything. So That's a lot of minutes to take off other people's plates. So, and shots too. Shots is the other question. Who's losing the shots? It's not Dylan Harper. Dylan Harper took 14 shots. He'll probably take the same amount. Everyone else is probably gonna have to give up 2, 3, 4 shots to Ace Bailey, who's gonna shoot, and he should shoot 15 shots a game, right?
Absolutely. Cannot shoot enough.
So I think they'll handle the Peacocks tonight. I think they showed against Wagner that this is a team that's gonna, try to win big in these non-conference games and build that Ken Pom and that net, and which is positive, right? And I think we'll see. I'm curious to see most. Lathan Somerville, can he build on that strong debut against Wagner and have a second good game? Because as you see in college basketball during this past week, a lot of guys had good first games, not so great second games. It's not about being good one game. It's about the consistency. I'm curious to see if Emmanuel Ogbole can bounce back. Like we said, it can't get any worse. And I think he'll want to prove that that's not him entirely. He has a chance of being a little bit more impactful.
All right. Anything else, Lanny?
Oh, yes. I got one thing.
What?
Sorry, good.
Go ahead.
Field hockey lost to Northwestern. The quarterfinals of the Big Ten tournament. Their season is over because they're 8-9, and you have to be at least 500 to make the NCAA tournament. Disappointing season for the ladies, I'd say.
Was that Puck Winter's last game?
It might have been. You'll be glad to know she was on the All Big Ten tournament team.
Of course she was.
I'm sure you voted on that panel.
I put that one a vote of one. All right.
Wrestling update. Scarlet Knights took care of business in their opener. It was on Saturday at Easton High School. They beat Duke, and Franklin and Marshall only lost 2 bouts out of 20.
Wow.
True freshman Connor Herrera made his debut, won both matches, looked really good. Oliveri was back in the lineup, looking good. So some good things, and it's going to lead up to what is going to be a really big Sunday for the Scarlet Knights taking on North Carolina State at Toms River North High School. I'll be there covering that one, so that'll be my first look at the Rutgers wrestling team. I'm kind of fired up about it, to be honest.
Awesome. All right, let's wrap it up there. We'll be back later in the week to do our predictions for the Maryland game, although we don't have to do it based on what you've heard here. Clearly, they are playing. This is like the Miami teams of the late 80s here and skill and talent based on what I heard on this podcast. We'll be back to pick that game, talk about the basketball, and everything else. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening to the Rutgers Rant. To participate in the conversation and receive live updates about the Scarlet Knights directly to your phone, sign up at nj.com/insider.